Hello everyone, I am the Commander Kirby, and welcome to my channel, the Commander Tavern. Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews and other deck techs. On this episode of the Brewery, I'll be discussing my take on a new commander from the Tarkir Dragonstorm Precons, Elsha Threefold Master. If you like this deck or any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout the video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel at no extra cost to you. But the very best way you can help support the channel is with my Patreon. There are plenty of perks for being a patron, such as early access to certain videos, exclusive deck techs, gifts, and more for as little as $1. You can also become a channel member for just 99 cents. Show off your support with a logo next to your name and exclusive emojis. Or you can always just support my channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. I put out a video every Monday, so you don't want to miss out. You can join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Elsha is a 1/1 Djinn Monk with Trample and Prowess for 1 blue, 1 red, and 1 white. Whenever Elsha connects to an opponent's face, you create as many 1/1 white monk creature tokens with Prowess equal to that damage. What I love about Elsha is that you don't really need to decide whether to go tall or wide because you can do both by just going tall. So you can dedicate the best Voltron strategies to the deck and you'll still get the benefits of having a horde of weenies to pump afterwards. In that sense, the deck seeks to make the most of Elsha having built-in trample. You can go hard towards an opponent and then you'll be left with a horde of weenies to chump block until it's your turn again. And we can amass a ton of weenies by pumping Elsha as much as possible. To that end, the deck is running Slayer's Stronghold and Sunhome Fortress of the Legion, which don't even take up slots in the deck. Double Strike in particular is pretty strong since we'll get the combat trigger twice after connecting. So we get double the tokens that way, but we'll see more on token doubling later on. Rogue's Passage is another card that doesn't take up a slot in the deck, while being one of the best lands for a Voltron deck. Yes, Elsha has built-in trample, but we don't want some of the damage to get through. We don't want to risk not being able to get through at all. We want all the damage to get through. All of it. Unblockability does that. Basilisk Gate is another land that pumps Elsha. However, you need to dedicate your mana base to gates in order to maximize the effect. That being said, getting a massive pump for just 2 and tapping while including mana generating lands in the deck as a drawback isn't really a drawback. The deck is running Baldur's Gate, which also makes the most out of running every possible gate. This generates an insane amount of mana later on. Heap Gate can give incremental advantage through storing treasures if you have nothing better to do with your mana at the beginning of the end step before your turn. Talon Gates of Madara is amazing as far as utility gates go because it phases out a creature when it enters. Not only that, but you can do so at instant speed if you have the mana because for just 4 generic, you can drop it from your hand onto the battlefield. Gaunt Gate is not only a reflecting pool for gates, but it also ensures that gates enter untapped. This is key because almost all of the rest of the gates in the deck enter tapped. These being Azorius Guild Gate, Boros Guild Gate, Izzet Guild Gate, Citadel Gate, Cliff Gate, Sea Gate, Thran Portal, Planar Nexus, and Gateway Plaza. Planar Nexus might not have the subtype in the line within the card frame, but since it has a rangeling type effect in its sex box, that makes it a gate in every zone all the time, so it might as well just be a gate for us. Now, if you were keeping track, that means that the deck is running a whopping 14 gates. So, you got that right, Maze's End is a possible win con here. Not only that, but before we can win with it, it can help us sort of ramp in the meantime. Or at the very least, get us the best gates in the deck one at a time in a very slow and excruciating manner. Unless you go for that pro gamer move and use it at instant speed to get Talon Gates of Madara from your library straight to the battlefield in response to one of your creatures getting eliminated. In any case, it performs multiple functions and gives the deck something different in terms of building. Anyways, going back to pumping Elsha, Commander's Plate, Caduceus Staff of Hermes, and Cauldron Complete are amazing equipment because not only do they pump our commander, but they protect as well. The plate gives protection from black and green, while the other two give indestructible as well as a bunch of other benefits. These equipment are just overall amazing, especially in Commander. Swiftfoot Boots, Champion's Helm, Darksteel Plate, Mithril Coat, and Hammer of the Zod are also included to protect Elsha, and these are quite ubiquitous, but at least the hammer has the added bonus of auto-attaching any equipment that enters the battlefield, while it also does the same for itself. Oh, and while pumping too. Robe of Stars gives us phasing whenever we want, if we pay the cost, which is absolute madness with Elsha equipped by a bunch of stuff. And that's because they're phased out along with her. So if anyone overloads a Vandal Blast, we can protect the equipment attached to Elsha by phasing her out. So keep that in mind. Bastion Protector also protects our commander and can become indestructible itself when equipped with anything that does so, providing a sort of backup to protecting Elsha. Because opponents might have to first deal with that before dealing with our commander, making the situation incredibly backbreaking. And since this deck is in bracket 2, you don't have to worry about cards like Cyclonic Rift, but more on the deck's bracket and the benefits for it later on. Back to the pump, Embercleave and Excalibur, Sword of Eden, are absolutely nuts here. Embercleave being able to cast in combat is insane since it can provide a sort of combat trick as well. Oh, while also giving double strike, which is busted here. Excalibur will almost always be free due to how many artifacts we should control at any time, just in equipment alone, making Elsha absolutely massive for just 2 generic after that. Stoneforge Masterwork, Horn of Valhalla, Sigil of Valor, Sublime Archangel, and Coat of Arms work once we have a massive board. And then Elsha becomes even more massive, creating an even more massive board state, which then snowballs exponentially after that. To be fair, only a couple of times is enough since you can then kill an opponent with either more than 21 commander damage or an ocean of 1/1 monks at minimum. Just be careful against typal decks when playing Coat of Arms since it is a global effect. Flowering of the White Tree, Honor of the Pure, Glorious Anthem, Spear of Heliod, War Leader's Call, Wedding Announcement, Eldrazi Monument, and Elesh Norn Grand Cenobite can also pump Elsha, but are naturally included to pump our eventually massive Monk Horde. Most of these are just generic pump effects, but others have additional effects. For example, Spear of Heliod has the added bonus of getting rid of anything that hits us, with the only downside being that it has to, hit us first. But still, it's a great deterrent. War Leader's Call also serves as a potential win con. Each creature entering our battlefield will trigger it, dealing 1 damage to all opponents. Create enough tokens enough times, and this alone will win us the game, much like Maze's End. Wedding Announcement is a card advantage before it becomes a pump effect. Since it's white, its card draw is quote-unquote fair. But when transformed, Wedding Festivity becomes another Glorious Anthem. Well, it's basically better than Glorious Anthem, so long as you're fine with waiting until it transforms first. Eldrazi Monument grants our creatures a pump effect as well as flying and indestructible. We only need to sacrifice a single monk token on each of our upkeeps to keep it around. If only there wasn't a way to consistently and constantly be creating a ton of sacrifice fodder with this deck. Last but not least, Elesh Norn is absolutely backbreaking. Not only does she significantly pump our board, but she also nerfs everyone else's, to the point of being a board wipe against other token decks. While you shouldn't play Coat of Arms against other token or typal decks, Elesh Norn is our way against those decks, clearing their board for hours. The rest are just relatively cheap ways to pump our horde, which helps for when we really need to have the biggest army. Speaking of which, what better way to have the biggest army than by literally having the most creatures in it? Mandrak Glory Dominus, Elspeth Stormslayer, and Ohertak Deepest Foundation are naturally included here. Mandrak has the added bonus of becoming indestructible itself very easily, since you just need 1 mana, 4 life, and sacrifice fodder, of which we'll have plenty of. Oh, and at instant speed too. Elspeth is so busted that the token ability is a replacement effect. It's not a loyalty ability like with Kaya, which means we're free to use the rest of her loyalty abilities, all of which are amazing here. Especially the one that puts a +1/+1 counter on all of our creatures, plus makes them fly until our next turn. All without even losing loyalty counters. What a busted planeswalker. Ohertak becomes a land when defeated, so even though it's indestructible, it's quite difficult to get rid of, especially since turning it back from a land is quite simple in this deck. The only downside to its front side is that it's only limited to creature tokens, so no doubling treasures for us, but that's fine. Renewed Solidarity also doubles tokens, but only at the end of the turn, and only if those tokens are monks, since that's obviously the creature type that's to be chosen as it enters the battlefield. That being said, it also provides a decent pump to creatures of the chosen type. You could include Anointed Procession if you wanted to, but I figured I can do more with these 4 cards than what Anointed Procession does on its own. You can only have 100 cards in a commander deck after all. We can also make use of the tokens created by Elsha for a myriad of reasons beyond overwhelming the board. We can also use them for card advantage. Skullclamp is obviously included. Just keep in mind that with so many pump effects, you might have to make the most of it before the tokens are pumped, especially before Prowess were to trigger. That being said, absolutely busted card here. Bite of the Thassa, Coastal Piracy, Enduring Curiosity, Reconnaissance Mission, and the Indomitable can make better use of our tokens for card advantage though, since they don't restrict how many cards we draw. It's 1 per creature regardless of how many hit how many opponents. You connected with 10 creatures? Congratulations, you just drew 10 cards. Now imagine having multiples of these in play. Kindred Discovery doesn't even need you to connect. So long as you chose Monk as the creature type, whenever a Monk attacks, you draw the card. So even if any were blocked, it doesn't matter because you already drew the cards. Not only that, but you also draw cards whenever the tokens are created, since it'll trigger whenever monks enter our battlefield. You just created 12 monk tokens with Elsha. Awesome, you just drew 12 cards too. such a busted enchantment. So much so that Hall of Helios Generosity is included just to recover it or any other amazing enchantment in the deck, all without taking up a slot in the deck. Yes, it might seem extra, but it makes moot your opponent's enchantment removal. Robe of the Archmagi is another amazing way to draw cards, especially in a Voltron deck like this one. If you deal a ton of damage with Elsha, you'll also draw a ton of cards. Pretty straightforward. Pure Steel Paladin and Whirlwind of Thought can also draw us a ton of cards, but we need to be casting a ton of things. While the enchantment draws us a card off of any non-creature spell we cast, the Paladin will trigger whenever an equipment enters the battlefield. But that's fine since the deck has so many equipment in it. However, not only that, but once we have Metalcraft, we can equip equipment for free. The deck draws so much cards that Reliquary Tower, Thought Vessel, and Decanter of Endless Water are included. Don't let the haters detract you from running Reliquary Tower in your decks, especially those that draw a ton of cards. I absolutely love this land and am never not happy when I get it early on. Plus, the other two cards serve as mana acceleration since they're also mana rocks, with the only other mana rock in the deck being Soul Ring. But that's to be expected. At least the Dragonstorm precons have new cool art for Soul Ring, super on flavor with the plane. Besides those three mana rocks, the deck is still running other mana accelerants such as Prosperous Partnership. With the amount of tokens being created thanks to Elsha, we can tap down any of the ones we can at the beginning of the end step before our turn to create an insane number of treasure tokens. Yes, the ratio is 3 creatures to 1 treasure, but we'll have plenty of creatures for that. Plus, it's already creating 2 creature tokens when it enters. Sword of the Animus and Bitterthorn Nissus Animus are much better mana accelerants though because it's land-based ramp, and the deck is pretty aggressive anyways, especially since these also pump Elsha. So each time we swing, we'll ramp for a basic land. These equipment are amazing here. The only reason Sword of Hearth and Home is excluded is because it gives protection from white, which does not help us for our own white effects. Wafer's Bauble, Burnished Heart, and Navigation Orb also provide land-based ramp, with the Orb being the best of these since it can also get gates. I tend to always go for Basilisk Gate and Gone Gate, but you can also go for Baldur's Gate or Talon Gates of Madara if you want yet another unexpected and surprising instant speed way to protect a key creature when it enters the battlefield. And with Academy Ruins in the deck, you can easily recover any of these 3 self-sacrificing land-based ramp artifacts for continuous use. In any case, the ruins are included because of how many equipment and other artifacts are in the deck. But it's always great when the floor of a card is still super amazing and useful. As for our own interaction, the deck is running Chaos Warp, Generous Gift, and Stroke of Midnight for single target removal, and Guthrie Wright's History and Unexplained Absence for multiple single target removal. Naturally, the best interaction are the ones that can deal with annoying lands like Maze of Ith and the like that prevent us from connecting with Elsha. But it doesn't hurt to get rid of any other annoying permanent either. Divine Reckoning, Promise of Loyalty, and Single Combat helps us in terms of Voltron since everyone only keeps one of their creatures, with us naturally keeping our commander. Elsha alone is enough for us to rebuild our board, especially if opponents have only a single potential blocker since Elsha has built-in trample. Perplexing Test, Raise the Palisade, Crisis of Conscience, Season of Weaving, and Hour of Reckoning are for the opposite effect, if we want to keep our huge board and win that way. If we face another tokens deck, we use the previously mentioned board wipes. But if we're not facing another tokens deck, then these board wipes are essentially one-sided in our favor, potentially giving us the win right afterwards. Clever Concealment is included to protect our own board from opposing interaction. Fortunately, like I mentioned earlier in the video, this is a Bracket 2 deck. This is why I omitted Ancient Tomb as well as my own Cyclonic Rift. So if you play it in a pod of other Bracket 2 decks, then you know you won't have to worry about Cyclonic Rift and the like. Yes, this is taking advantage of the bracket system, but that's the point. If you know what to expect, you know how to play around it. Excluding Ancient Tomb and Cyclonic Rift is a small price to play in order to not play against Cyclonic Rift, as well as Tutors and other high-powered strategies, especially because this deck is quite simple, smash face with Elsha and or the huge army she creates. The rest of the deck is just Threats of the Lands. Apart from the previously mentioned ones, the deck's running Rogran Triome, Mystic Monastery, Reflecting Pool, and Command Tower, as well as 4 of each basic land for the basic land ramp effects. As with all of my other texts, you can build your mana base according to your budget. Whether you decide more expensive cards or even cheaper cards is up to you, you do you. This brew is just an idea of how to build around Elsha Threefold Master. What I like about Elsha is that you're not torn between whether making it a go tall or go wide deck. You can focus on Voltron in your deck list and take it from there. All of the cards in it that support the token strategy are also useful in other aspects, which is why their inclusion is amazing regardless of the number of monk tokens you're creating. That being said, the goal is to create as many as possible, but at that point you're already eliminating an opponent or 2 with commander damage. If you're interested in the deck list of this spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the brewers, for their patronage. I'd also like to thank anyone using my TCG Player affiliate link. That also helps out the channel. So make sure you get your Tarkir Dragonstorm singles there. I also want to thank any channel members. Your membership is greatly appreciated. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of The Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am the Man at Kirby, and happy brewing.